What is up, everyone, and welcome back to the Talking Sports Podcast right here on YouTube, Apple Podcast, and Spotify. As always, I am your host, Peter DiBiasi, and this is another edition of the Talking Sports Podcast on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, and Spotify. Make sure you guys follow us on social media at Talking Sports PD on X and on Instagram. And as always, we are sponsored by Underdog Fantasy. Use code TSP for a 100% deposit match up to $100. Make sure you guys get on TSP, so make sure you get on Underdog Fantasy and use code TSP. It's been a while. It's been about, I would say, give or take a month since I've last talked to you guys. And our last episode had to do with Virginia Tech hiring James Franklin. So if you have not checked that episode out on any of the platforms, go back, check that out. But we are bringing you guys more college football episodes here and more college football content in today's edition of the podcast. We did this last year. We're going to do it's the college football playoff. I love this time. And we can put aside our differences in all the sense of who should be in, who should not be in, how the system works. It's all a mess anyway. So let's maybe enjoy some of the games. So we got this weekend. We got the first round. I'll do another episode for the quarters. I'll do another episode for the semis. And then I'll do another episode for the championship. So you're going to get 4 episodes of college football playoff preview. I'll have a guest join me in the other 3 episodes. But for this one, it is just me. So sit back and relax. If you're on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, make sure you download the episode, give us a follow. And if you're on YouTube, like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. Road to 6,000 continues. It's 4 games. We have 4 games to start the year. It's Alabama, Oklahoma, Miami, Texas A&M, Tulane, Ole Miss, and James Madison versus Oregon in that particular order. And remember, these 4 games are happening on campuses. So we're going to have a game at Oklahoma. We're going to have a game at A&M, at Ole Miss, and at Oregon. So those 4 teams are hosting 4 teams. That does not continue into the quarterfinals as we have neutral site games moving forward. Let's start. I'm going to go in order of when the games start. So Friday night, Alabama, Oklahoma, a rematch of a game we saw earlier this year in Tuscaloosa. Alabama did not win that game. Oklahoma went into Tuscaloosa and it ended up beating Alabama. Let's talk about Alabama here. Alabama finished 10-3, 7-1 in SEC, and then obviously got the 9 seed on the playoff. They lost in the SEC championship game to Georgia, and they kind of got trounced, right? Like, I don't know if the final score shows you how much they actually lost by, but it was a pretty dominant showing from the Georgia Bulldogs. So we'll get some of the offensive metrics for Alabama. We're going to break down both teams, and then I will bring it together. So I'm going to give you metrics of both Alabama, metrics on Oklahoma, and then I'll bring it together and then give you our prediction. Alabama, scoring offense. They averaged 31.2 points per game. Overall offense, they're balanced, but they're more of a passing offense. Something that concerns me when it comes to Alabama is when they're not able to run the ball, Ty Simpson becomes very vulnerable. Ty Simpson had, I feel like, about 3 different seasons this year. It was the first half of the year where, especially against Florida State, people thought he wasn't the quarterback. Then Alabama goes on an incredible run, including a win over Georgia and a handful of other ranked teams, when he looks like a Heisman candidate and a Heisman finalist. And then all of a sudden, he struggles down the stretch. They need to be able to run the ball. They have to, because they have weapons. They have Bernard. They have Ryan Williams. They have weapons. They cannot run the ball. And it's crazy to talk about that an Alabama football team cannot run the football. Like, we're talking about guys that have produced Josh Jacobs. They have produced Mark Ingram. They produced Derrick Henry, Damian Harris. They produced a ton of elite NFL running backs and elite college running backs, and they can't run the ball. It's crazy. They're key offensively. They have to find a way to be able to run the ball at some point in this game. It doesn't have to be. They don't have to be Derrick Henry and the Ravens here. They just have to find a way to be a threat running the ball. Defensively for Alabama, they're one of the top defenses in the country. And we'll talk about Oklahoma, who's also one of the top defenses in the country. Bama's given up 17.4 points per game. They also they're not great against the run. They're middle of the pack nationally against the run. So they're solid, but they're not elite versus the run. They're very good at turning the ball over. They're a strong turnover margin team. They're plus 1.1 per game in the turnover margin. So defensively, their pass defense has been good. Their rush defense has been very up and down. In this game against Oklahoma, I don't know how much they need to lean on their defense because of the shortcomings that Oklahoma has offensively. But like Oklahoma does defensively, Alabama flips the field, and they have a strong turnover margin. Flipping over at plus 1.1. Oklahoma Sooners, their team profile here. They finished 10-2, 6-2 in the SEC, and got the number 8 overall seed. That resume is boosted by a win in Tuscaloosa. You heard that right. They lost in Tuscaloosa. Their 2 losses are the Red River rivalry against Texas, and then they obviously lost to Ole Miss as well. Offensively, this is a really this concerns me when it comes to Oklahoma. They average 26.4 points per game. That might jump off the page, but that's not that bad. In context and in college football, it's very middle of the pack. They're below Alabama offensively. Since John Mateer returned from that injury, they've been a shell of themselves offensively. I think it's a little bit of John Mateer's not being fully healthy. They just don't have the weapons around him. They're about average in yards per game. They're good in the red zone. This is something when it comes to Oklahoma that their red zone offense has been great. So my biggest pet peeve is, can they even get to the red zone? Before the injury, John Mateer in his Oklahoma offense, he was a Heisman candidate. He was playing great. The offense was flying high. I thought they had a chance to be a really good team, and they ended up being a really good team, but they lean on their defense. Offensively, they're very efficient in the red zone. My biggest pet peeve, or my biggest concern when it comes to Oklahoma in this game, how many chances are they going to be able to get in the red zone? Like, how many times are they going to be able to get into the red zone in that sense? Because at this point, I don't know if it's that many times based off their lack of offense. But this is where it comes down for Oklahoma defensively. 13.9 points per game allowed in the SEC and in college football. That is elite defense. We talk about an Alabama team that can't run the ball. And I told you one of their keys to the game is that they're going to have to find a way to have some sort of balanced offensive attack. That includes passing the ball, and that includes rushing the ball or running the ball. If you look at where Oklahoma's defense kind of sits on the rushing defense, they're elite. 81 yards allowed per game. 81 yards allowed per game. You mix that in with a great run defense and a defensive line and linebacker unit that gets after you. They average about 3.5 sacks and 9.5 tackles for loss per game, and they don't give up explosive plays. This Oklahoma defense is elite. We saw it against Alabama. They just forced turnovers. They won that game because they forced multiple turnovers, and there could have been more turnovers just based off Alabama recovered a couple fumbles. So Oklahoma defensively, they can stop the run, and they're great at getting after the quarterback. 3.5 sacks allowed, 3.5 sacks a game, and 9.5 tackles for loss per game. It's a top 5 defense in the country. They played earlier this year. Oklahoma 23, Alabama 21. They forced a ton of turnovers, and they limited Alabama's rushing attack. That's what was that key to the game. I talked about just a minute ago, Alabama has to be able to find a way to run the ball against a defense in Oklahoma that doesn't allow a lot of rushing yards, that doesn't allow a lot of explosive plays, that doesn't allow you to beat you deep or in the middle or anywhere on the field. It's a tall task asking for Alabama to see what happens, but they played before. Keys to the game for both teams. Alabama, 3 things Alabama must do to win this game. Establish even some sort of a rushing attack. I mentioned it earlier, but Oklahoma has 81 yards allowed per game, one of the best rushing defenses in the country. Alabama has struggled to run the ball. But if you're an Alabama fan, and if you're picking Alabama to win this game, they need to be able to run the ball, because I don't know if Ty Simpson can drop back 35 times and they can win this game. I just don't know if Alabama's offense is capable of doing that. Secondly, they got to protect the football. We saw in the first time when these two teams played, it really flipped when Alabama was putting the ball on the ground and Oklahoma was forcing turnovers and giving their offense that has struggled this year short fields. I think if you're Alabama, one, you don't want to obviously lose possessions and give Oklahoma more possessions, but you also don't want to give this Oklahoma offense a short field. Like, they're not a good offense right now. They have not been a good offense. Why would you want to give them a short field? Why would you want to give them more options to go, or easier options to score? And third, they have to find a way to exploit some of the matchups through the air. If there's one way you can get this Oklahoma defense, it's through the air. It's not the best pass defense. It's not a bad pass defense, but they're so elite at the linebacking core and they're so elite up front that they become a little vulnerable out over the top. I think if you can get Ryan Williams and you can get Giovanni Bernard to go over the top, and if you can get Ryan Williams that we saw in the first half against in the SEC championship game, I think there's big plays to be had in this game. 3 keys for Oklahoma. What does Oklahoma need to do to win this game? They got to control Alabama's rushing game. It kind of goes back to the first point of what Alabama needs to do. Alabama needs to run the ball. Oklahoma has to limit the run. Because like I said, I don't know if Ty Simpson can throw the ball 35 times and Alabama could win this game. They got to win the turnover battle, and that's an easy one. My third one, and I think this is the most important one. You got to convert your red zone chances, because I said your red zone offense has been good this year. They haven't had a lot of opportunities this year based off the fact that their offense just hasn't been efficient enough to get into the red zone. They have to sustain drives. They have to find a way to put together 7, 8, 9 play drives that bleeds the clock and that controls momentum and keeps Alabama's offense and their quick play offense off the field. Mateer and company have to find a way to establish some sort of offensive identity and find a way to kind of control the clock, control the game. With that being said, Alabama, 9-seed Alabama on a Friday night, going to Norman, Oklahoma, taking on the 8-seed Oklahoma. They played earlier this year, and Oklahoma came out on top. I don't know if it happens this time. I'm going to take Alabama. This is one of the better matchups we have in round one. I'm taking Alabama to defeat Oklahoma on a Friday night in Norman. Okay, that is the first prediction for me, Alabama over Oklahoma. If you guys missed this episode, all these picks will be on our Instagram and social media page come Friday morning, so just check that out as always. Okay, 10-seed Miami and 7-seed A&M. I'm doing this in order of when these games are being played. I'm going to take a sip of water and let's go. We're going to do a little breakdown of each team first, like we did. Offensively for Miami, they're averaged 34.1 points per game. That is top 30 nationally. And they're rushing at a clip of 148 yards per game, and they're throwing for 275.8 yards per game. So this is a top 30 offense. It's been inconsistent. Carson Beck has had some untimely turnovers. We saw in the was it the Virginia game? Did they play Virginia? No, we saw in the Louisville game, and then we saw in the SMU game. Sorry, I got my games mixed up in the great conference that the ACC is. In the Louisville and SMU games, we saw a couple costly turnovers from Carson Beck that really hindered them. And that obviously gave them almost sent them home and not in this playoff. Defensively, they're a top 10 defense in the top 10, top 15. I'm going to tell you where they are in some of these defense. Points allowed, they're top 10. Total defense, they're top 15. Russian defense, they're top 10. Pass defense, they're top 30. And turnover margin, they're 12th in the country in turnover margin. This defense has been great. It's led by Ruben Bain. There are some comments by an A&M O-lineman saying that he wasn't really afraid. I'm paraphrasing, but he wasn't really afraid, and they were ready for Ruben Bain. That's a dumb thing to say. That is not what you want to be saying about Ruben Bain, who's a projected top 5, top 10 pick in this upcoming NFL draft. So top 10 defense in points allowed. Miami is top 15 in total defense, top 10 in rush defense, top 30 in pass defense, and they're 12th in turnover margin. This offense is top 30 nationally, but it's been inconsistent. But they've leaned on this defense to keep them in games. This defense has been elite. Flip over to A&M. A&M also has a top 15 offense, 36.3 points per game. They have a balanced offense. They have a balanced passing and rushing attack. They average 454.4 yards per game. Their defense is a little concerning. They're very middle of the pack defense. They're allowing 21.9 points per game. So you're like, okay, that's not bad. So they allow 21.9 points per game. Miami allows 13.8 points per game. Total defense, they're fine. Rush defense, pass defense, they're fine. But this A&M team has been a big play defense, but a big play offense with Marcel Reed. Keys to the game for both teams. And go back to I skipped ahead. Go back to A&M's offense. They're very hit or miss. It's what Marcel Reed are we going to get? If we're going to get Marcel Reed that we saw in the first half against South Carolina, A&M might get blown out of their own building. If we get the Marcel Reed that we saw in the second half against South Carolina, Miami might get blown out of their own building. My biggest thing with A&M is, can they get consistent enough quarterback play from Marcel Reed? I think you can say the same thing for Miami. Can they get consistent enough quarterback play from Carson Beck? But there's defense. It's the home environment at A&M. It's the 12th man at A&M. And you also have a defense that's been very opportunistic in the sense that they're not great, but they force turnovers and they get the ball back to their offense. Keys to the game for both teams. I'm excited for this game. I know it's a nooner, and I wish this was a Saturday night. I don't make the TV schedules because I wish Alabama, Oklahoma was Friday night, which I like. And then I wish A&M, Miami, or Miami A&M was Saturday night. But nooner, not the end of the world. Keys to the game for Miami. Miami has to win the line of scrimmage. Miami's O-line and D-line grades and ranks among the nation's best versus pressure and blocking. So Miami has to win the line of scrimmage. Their secondary is very suspect, in my opinion. They have to be able to win the line of scrimmage on both sides of the ball. Offensively, you want to give Carson Beck in this running game time. You want to create lanes for the running game, but you also want to give Carson Beck time back there and not make him rushed. Defensively, you want to control the line of scrimmage. You want to make sure that you can find a way to get after Marcel Reed. Secondly, explosive plays. Miami's offense thrives on chunk plays through the air. They have to be able to take advantage of an A&M defense that is very susceptible to big plays in crucial moments. Like, that's what A&M has hindered their defense this year. The fact that they have given up big plays in crucial moments. Miami's offense kind of revolves around big plays. They have to keep doing that. And then they got to protect the ball and limit the penalties. They're +9 in turnover margin, and Beck needs to be able to hold on to the ball in key moments. In Louisville versus SMU, he has costly turnovers and costly INTs that have cost him football games. He cannot do that on the road against A&M. A couple keys for A&M: control the possession. I think they have to keep Carson Beck in that offense and that quick play offense off the field. I also think Miami's defense forces a ton of turnovers. They're top 12 in turnover margin per game. Alabama has to lead. I keep mixing these games up. A&M has to lead in time of possession. They have to find a way to control the clock. They have to find a way to kind of limit the possessions and also keep the defense on its heels. Balanced offense. Find a way to run the ball, run a way to pass the ball. If you're too one-dimensional, and that means just Marcel Reed trying to make a play, that's their one dimension. Marcel Reed making a play, all on Marcel Reed's shoulders, you're going to lose this game, because I think Miami's defense is good enough to key in on that one element, which is Marcel Reed making plays, and you're going to lose this game. Find a way to get other guys involved, get an established rushing attack, and just find a way to take a little bit off Marcel Reed's shoulders, and then obviously limit turnovers. I talked about Miami's +9 turnover margin, top 12 in the country. They force turnovers. They capitalize on turnovers. A&M has to keep the ball to themselves. They can't put the ball on the ground, and they can't force bad passes. Marcel Reed's one knock on him, and we saw it against South Carolina, is the turnovers. He has to find a way to play within himself. And then keep the home field impact. Like, you have a home field advantage that not a lot of teams in this country do. Use it. But when you put the ball on the ground and you give up the ball and you give the ball right back to Miami, the home crowd kind of gets taken out of it. So don't let that happen if you're A&M. Score prediction. It is time. Who wins? 10 Miami versus 7 seed Texas A&M. For my game, for the noon game on ESPN, I'm taking Texas A&M over Miami. So I have A&M defeating Miami. So for who people keeping count at home, I have A&M over Miami, and then I have Alabama over Oklahoma. I have the 7 seed A&M advancing along with the 9 seed Alabama. Make sure you guys drop a like, comment, and subscribe. Let's get moving. We have 2 more games to predict, and that is the afternoon game. And I'm going to paraphrase this before we break down both of these games. I'm not here to debate if these teams should both be in. Well, they both should be in based off the criteria that has been established by the College Football Playoff Committee. But I'm not here to do that. We can do that in a later episode of like who should make the playoff, how they should do the playoff, all that fun stuff. I'm just predicting games that are in front of me. 11 seed Tulane at 6 seed Ole Miss. Ole Miss, Lane Kiffin's coaching for them, right? Nope. Lane Kiffin's just, I'm not gonna say what I think of Lane Kiffin, because everyone knows what people think of Lane Kiffin. He's kind of I can't say it out loud. But Lane Kiffin is the coach of LSU, gave up on his players in a playoff run, abandoned his players, didn't stick by side. Like what kind of leader are you if you're doing that? But whatever. We know who Lane Kiffin is. Just Google him, man, and you'll find out who Lane Kiffin is as a person and as a coach. Okay, 11 seed Tulane versus 6 seed Ole Miss. Let's talk about Tulane first. They finished 11-2 in the American Athletic Conference. They ended up winning the American Athletic Conference. Yards per game, they're 42nd in the country. They average 29.1 points per game. So they're middle of the tier in scoring in the country. I get it. They play the American Conference. They play a schedule that is not anywhere near what Ole Miss or Oregon or A&M or Alabama or Oklahoma plays. And they're getting the same thing with JMU. I get it. I understand. Don't yell at me. I understand who they play, and all that kind of fun stuff. But I'm just going to give you the stats. Defensively, they're not good. Like, they're not a good defensive team. Yards allowed, middle of the pack. Passing yards allowed, one of the weaker defenses in the country. They've given up 255 yards through the air. They're fine against the run, 120 yards, rushing yards allowed per game. And then points allowed, they're giving up 22.6, which is a little bit respectable. The strengths and weaknesses, their balanced offense is really good. Defensive struggles more versus the pass than the run. Like, they struggle against the pass, and that is scary when you're going into Oxford and playing Ole Miss. Like, if you're not going to be able to stop the pass, you have no business even being on the field against Ole Miss if you can't stop the pass against this team. Okay, for Ole Miss, they finished 11-1. That one loss was to Georgia in Athens. They did not end up playing in the SEC championship game based off tiebreakers. Yards per game, top 5 nationally. Passing yards per game, elite. Rushing yards per game, 188.5. And they're averaging 37.3 points per game, one of the best high-octane offenses in the country. Defensively, they're not as good as they were defensively last year, but they're still a good defense. There's yards allowed per game. They give up 333 yards per game. That's pretty strong defense. Pass defense, they're giving up 235. Rush defense, 150. And then points allowed, they're a top 25 points allowed defense in the country. They're giving up 20.1 points per game. They're one of the best passing attacks, efficient third down offense. Their defense is weird. They start slow. So defense is generally good. Like, from the whole game, if you look at the game as a whole, defensively, they've been a good defense. They just, at times, outside of the Georgia game, because Georgia game was kind of a role reversal in the sense that they started so well, but then struggled down the stretch defensively. For the most part, they've been poor starting games, but they've kind of came on late and surged late defensively. Yeah, we talk about like strength of schedule here. We have Ole Miss, who's one of the better strength of schedules in the country, and then you factor in Tulane, who is one of the weaker strength of schedules in the country. This is not the only matchup we've seen this year. So we haven't seen Miami A&M this year, which is cool. We did see Alabama, Oklahoma in Tuscaloosa, and Oklahoma won this game, but I picked Alabama. Wait, did we see Tulane, Ole Miss? Oh, yeah. We saw Ole Miss Tulane. It was in Oxford. Ole Miss won 45-10. Ole Miss totaled 548 yards. Tulane had 282 yards, and it was a shellacking in Oxford. Keys to the game. What Tulane must do: clean up the passing game. Ole Miss defense thrives on disrupting rhythm. Tulane must protect the ball and stay efficient through the air, in the sense that Ole Miss's defense is good at taking guys off their sequences, off their pace, putting them in down and distances that they're not comfortable with. If you're Tulane, you cannot be in situations where you have third and longs over and over and over and over again. You're going to get boat raced out of the building. Control time of possession. You got to lean on the run. You have to be able to find a way to win some sort of area. I think it's the time of the possession that you have to win. Keep Ole Miss's high-octane, Trinidad Chambliss, high-explosive offense on the bench. Control the time, limit possessions. That's how you pull upsets. And then you got to get after Trinidad Chambliss. When he's on the field, have to find a way to get after him. Make him panic back there. If you give him time all day, you're going to lose, and it's going to be a problem. Ole Miss, they have to exploit the passing matchups. They have the advantage on the outside. Their receivers versus Tulane's secondary is a mismatch. It's a talent mismatch. It's a roster mismatch in this game. Trinidad Chambliss should have no problem exploiting Tulane's defense. You got to be able to run the ball. Or stop the run. If Tulane wants to win this game, they have to control the time of possession. They have to find a way to limit to possessions and make this a low-scoring game. They are not going to win a track meet because it won't be a track meet. It'll be 45-10 like we saw earlier this year. If you're Ole Miss, you have to stop the run, make them in down to distances that they're not comfortable, and put it 38, 39, and you can win the game. And also, if you're Ole Miss, this sounds stupid, but I say limit turnovers. I mean, the self-inflicted wounds. How you lose these games and how you lose when you have such a different roster advantage and you're such big favorites is because you turn the ball over and you give Tulane either extra possessions or short fields. Just be yourself. Do your thing. Prediction time. Ole Miss. It's 11 seed Tulane taking on 6 seed Ole Miss in Oxford. This is a shellacking. This is going to be an absolute shellacking. John Summerall, who's been a little bit of a cornball the last 2 weeks, is the head coach of Florida now. He's coaching both teams. He's 95% out, It's a shellacking. Is it get to 45-10 like we saw last time? I don't know. This game is never in doubt. Ole Miss throttles Tulane on Saturday afternoon in Oxford. Sorry, Tulane, but I respect G5. You're not Boise State last year. You're not even a good G5 team. And I respect G5. I think G5 should play in the playoff. I think they should get 1 bid. 2 bid this week was ridiculous how it worked out, but that's more on the ACC than JMU in my opinion. I think they should get a bid. I agree. I'd have nothing against them getting a bid. But this isn't a good, like I'm telling you how it is in a matchup context. This is not a good G5 team. Like in the grand scheme of G5 teams, like this is just not a good This is a G5 team that lost to UTSA. Like they should the G5 get a 1 bid? Yes. But can you predict them to get absolutely shellacked because they're not a good G5 team? Yes. And that's what I did. We're not done talking about G5 teams. We have one more G5 team. I'm going to take a sip of water. Make sure you guys like, make sure you guys comment, and make sure you guys subscribe to the YouTube channel. Okay. Final game. 12 seed JMU, James Madison out of Virginia, going up to Eugene, Oregon, taking on 5 seed Oregon. Let's talk about JMU first here. Offense, points per game, 32.1. They led by Bob Chesney, who's also halfway out the door coaching UCLA. So you have Summerall. So you have the 2 G5 teams. Both coaches have taken different jobs. They're continuing to coach with JMU and Tulane throughout the entirety of the playoff, and whenever that ends for them, probably Saturday. But they're both ones at UCLA in Chesney and other ones at Florida in Summerall. JMU, points per game, 32.1. Total offense, 415 yards a game. They're top 20 nationally in time of possession. I'm trying to find stuff here, guys. Yeah, they're top 20 nationally in time of possession. Not much in anything else offensively. Points per game, they're very good. Defensively, they're allowing 17.8 points per game. Yes, take that with a grain of salt because they play in the Sun Belt. But they're still only giving up 17.8 per game. Their rush defense is very good. They're top 25 nationally in rushing yards allowed per game, 105. They force 1.9 turnovers per game. Something that is key, in my opinion. Their red zone defense ranks top 20 nationally. That's something to look. I'm just looking out, guys. That is something to look for in this game. Their top 20 red zone defense. They're well coached. They're efficient. They're disciplined. I just don't know if they have the talent to beat Oregon. Oregon metrics here. Oregon lost 1 game this year at home to Indiana. They did not get into the Big Ten championship. That was Indiana versus Ohio State. But Oregon, 5 seed, had a tremendous year. We saw what happened last year with Oregon, guys. They got a bye. They were the 1 seed. They go to the quarterfinals automatically. They take on Ohio State in the Rose Bowl, and they get shellacked. They get blown out. Revenge time. Not this week, but maybe next week when if Oregon wins, goes and takes on Texas Tech in the 4-5 matchup. But this is maybe a little bit of revenge playoff run for Dan Lanning. Points per game, 38.5, top 10 nationally. 485 yards per game. 295 passing yards per game. Dante Moore has been elite. He's talked about potentially being the number 2 quarterback in this 2026 draft class. If he does go out, if he doesn't, Oregon gets another great quarterback for next year. He's been tremendous. Biggest thing for Oregon, do they get their receivers back? They've been injured. Evan Stewart's practicing this week. Do they need him against James Madison? Absolutely not. But if they want to make a playoff run, they need to get healthy on the outside. They've been hindered with injuries at the receiving core. Rushing yards per game, 190. They're top 15 in explosive plays of 20-plus yards. So this offense just hits you, bang, touchdown. Run, touchdown. Short pass, deep pass, touchdown. Top 15 in explosive plays of over 20-plus yards. JMU defense better be ready to start running and cover those deep plays. Points allowed, they're giving up 20.4 points per game. Their defense has been a little bit up and down. That's a concern for me. Not in this game, but overall, if Oregon wants to make the run to the semifinals and potentially to a national championship, their defense has been a little up and down, a little inconsistent. Total defense, 345 yards per game. Pass defense, 215 yards per game. Rush defense, 130 yards per game. They're good at front. They're very good up front. Tackles for loss. They're very disruptive up front. It's their secondary, and it's their inconsistency in their secondary that concerns me. We saw Fernando Mendoza take advantage of that when Indiana took on Oregon early this year. Yet James Madison does not have Fernando Mendoza. That's more of a quarterfinal. When we do a quarterfinals preview, when we talk about Texas Tech versus Oregon, that's when the secondary actually becomes a problem because like Tulane versus Ole Miss, this is a talent roster mismatch. It's a coaching mismatch, and it's a talent, it's a roster, it's an everything mismatch, environment mismatch. Like it's a lot. Okay, let's keep going. Yeah, the strength of schedule we talked about, like top 10 nationally for Oregon, and then you have middle of the pack, middle tier with JMU because of the Sun Belt, and they played limited Power 5 teams. Yeah. Keys to the game. How can James Madison pull the upset? Control the tempo. Long, methodical drives, limit Oregon possessions. Like I mentioned it before, how does Tulane pull an upset over Ole Miss? It's the same way how James Madison pulls an upset over Oregon. Limit the possessions, long drives, control time of possession. Win the line of scrimmage. You have to be able to find a way to limit the line of scrimmage. I talked about how Oregon is disruptive up front defensively. If JMU just gets pushed back and pushed around on both the offensive line and the defensive line, one, it's your quarterback's going to be under duress all day, no time to throw. You're not going to be able to establish a running game. And then if you look on defense, if your defense line getting pushed back, Oregon can do whatever they want. They can gash you for 8, 10, 12 yards per carry, and it's going to be a long day. I talked about how Oregon's top 15 nationally in explosive plays of 20-plus yards. Guess what JMU has to do? Not give up explosive plays. If you give up explosive plays all night, you're going to get run out of the building. Like, you just cannot give up explosive plays. You have to limit time of possession. You have to control the possession, because if you're giving up touchdown drives on 3 to 4 plays, you're going to get blown out of the building. And then red zone efficiency. You cannot, I don't know how many times JMU gets into the red zone, but when you do, you cannot, repeat me, not settle for field goals. It's touchdowns or bust, in my opinion. Like, you're not going to beat Oregon in Eugene as the talent roster that James Madison has by kicking field goals. Touchdowns, touchdowns, touchdowns. How does Oregon advance? Show up. Yeah, I'm a little rude. Show up. Oregon just probably has to show up. I'm half joking, but yeah, start fast. Don't let James Madison get any confidence. Don't let them control the possession. Punch them in the mouth early. Stretch the field vertically. Take advantage of JMU's up and down defense. You have the talent on the outside. I know you've had some injuries at receiver, Evan Stewart, and a handful of other guys, but you still have the talent to take the top off the defense. And just avoid the turnover swings. Don't give, like I said for the Tulane Ole Miss matchup, don't give JMU extra possessions or short fields. Just don't. But once again, similar to the Ole Miss kind of strategy, show up. Like, Ole Miss and Oregon just have to show up. Ole Miss and Oregon can play a C- game and still win comfortably. You can't say that for the Miami game, Miami versus A&M. You can't say that for Alabama versus Oklahoma. Like, those teams have to play elite games to win those games. Oregon and Ole Miss do not. That's the beauty of this year. Usually it's just a 5-seed playing the G5 team and the 12-seed matchup here. But that's the beauty of this year when you get 2 G5 teams. If you're a 5 and 6, you get a mini bye heading to the finals. Prediction. Who wins? 12-seed James Madison versus 5-seed Oregon on a Saturday night in Eugene. It's going to be a close one. No, it's not. Oregon throttles James Madison by 21-plus points, probably 30-plus points, in my opinion. Oregon over James Madison. And once again, I'm not advocating for no G5s. I'm not advocating for 2 G5s. It should never be 2 G5s, but that's not James Madison's fault. That is the ACC's not knowing how to do a tiebreaker. So thank you, Jim Phillips, for that. I'm advocating for 1 G5. I really am. But it doesn't mean I'm going to have to sit here and pick the G5 to win, or say, like, Boise State G5 would do laps around both Tulane and James Madison this year. Like, Boise State, if they were playing on a neutral field, last year's Boise State, if they were playing on a neutral field against Tulane or James Madison right now, this year's team, they'd be double-digit point favorites. So that is what it is. I love this. I love the first round. We'll be back for the quarterfinals. We'll be back for the semifinals, and we'll be back for the finals. We're going to run through it one more time. Alabama over Oklahoma. Texas A&M over Miami. Ole Miss over Tulane. And then finally, Oregon over James Madison. Let me know in the comment section who you guys got. Does Tulane or James Madison pull an upset? Do they cover the spread? Is it a close game heading into the fourth quarter? Is Oregon or Ole Miss shaking in their boots heading in the fourth quarter? And let me know what you guys got in Miami versus A&M and Alabama versus OU in Norman and in College Station. As always, we are sponsored by Underdog Fantasy. Use code TSP for 100% deposit match up to $100. Link is in the description. And as always, social media, Talking Sports PD on X and on Instagram. Both of those links are in the description. Make sure you guys follow on both of those accounts. We really appreciate if you do. If you support those, if you support both of those accounts, it means a lot. And as always, subscribe to the YouTube channel, like, comment, and subscribe. Road to 6,000 continues. And as always, guys, Apple Podcasts and Spotify, if you don't prefer YouTube, links are both in the description. Hopefully you guys enjoyed college football playoff first round preview. We'll be back for the quarterfinals. We'll be back for the semifinals. We'll be back for the finals. Enjoy the 4 games this weekend. There's some NFL games as well. We got playoff previews coming up in a couple weeks, so don't go anywhere for those episodes as well. A ton of football content coming your way. Hopefully you guys enjoy the 4 games this weekend, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Thank you.